music in case you haven't heard it, right?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so we're living the dream. Right, Alan, how is it going, brother?
Oh, hello. Good evening. Good evening, everybody.
Yeah, you're right. So obviously we're recording this in the wee hours of the morning because we both got lives and things that are going on.
Yes.
And so the only time we can ever get together is at the witching hour, which seems to be once the sun goes down, which could be a good thing, could be a bad thing. It depends on how you're looking at it. What happened?
Hello?
Complete dead air.
Yes.
Something happened? It was like a power surge or something?
No, just thinking. Is it a good thing or is it a bad thing?
Wow, okay.
Yes, I can't make a mind up. Sometimes good, sometimes bad.
So listen, at the moment, it depends on how you're looking at it, right? So I don't know about you, but I'm trying to stay as busy as possible in these times just to keep my mind occupied, just to kind of keep me away from the news at night, just to kind of keep me rolling. I think that it's a very important part of life now, which means that I'm just going to I'm going to make an effort to just chill out and get on with it. You know what I mean?
Yes, well, so talking about chilling out. So yesterday, the British government finally enforced this face mask.
Oh, got it. You're going to get straight into it.
Yes.
Yeah, you're right up at the deep end.
Yes.
Okay, and what do you think about that?
How many months too late? So from January, when this pandemic started, if you look in the East, in China, Japan, Korea, Thailand, everywhere, everybody are wearing masks. And from January, February, March, in here we're debating, oh no, mask, oh, it's not useful. Oh no, mask is it's going to do you more harm than good.
Yeah, sure.
And then suddenly now, why the U-turn?
Well,
why the U-turn?
Well, I think there's a few reasons for that. So you will already know this, but I'm a huge proponent of the mask. I'm one of the only people that I ever see on a daily basis walking around wearing a mask. I would have one on now if it wasn't for our fancy sneeze screen between the two of us, and the fact that we've got an open studio here, and all the windows are open and stuff. And I know you're cool, and I've just had a test, and I know that I'm good. So I mean. Look, the mask thing just puzzles me, right? Because on a daily basis, well, not a daily basis. Yes, no, on a daily basis, I have to stop myself from arguing with people posting absolute horseshit on social media about masks. Do they work? Why would you wear one? I believe that the best thing to do is not wear a mask, etc., right? So for me, I think originally in the beginning, the storyline was, we're not going to wear masks because we want to save those masks for our healthcare workers, right?
Right.
So I suppose the theory is that government decided to take their resources and make sure that healthcare had them first, which is rightly so.
Yes, but we're not talking about N95 here, are we? Any mask, even if it's not 100%. We can reduce to 50%. 50% is 50% is better than 0%.
Sure, of course, and I absolutely agree with that. But the thing that I found interesting is that when I try to explain the difference between the East and the West and how we're approaching this particular situation with COVID, you'll know. And back in Hong Kong, if you have a cold and you walk out of your house, as a courtesy to those around you, you're usually going to put on a mask. Is that right? Yeah.
Yes, that's right. Yes.
And cultures like Japan, Korea, it's accepted practice. For some reason, in the West and in places like in England where we are, it's not something that we do as a common courtesy to others. I mean, I think about like how I've conducted myself in the last few years, and the amount of times I went out of the house on death's door, full of cold, or I had pneumonia a few years ago, and I was still working through that, and I was trying my best to carry on with life, and I didn't wear a mask when I went out. I didn't really consider others the way I should do, and that's a real problem. It's a real problem with how we are now going to probably, I hope, learn to conduct ourselves. You know what I mean? Like, I hope people are now seeing how important health is, and how I think that there'll be a split group still. So you'll have the have a mask on population, and of course you're going to have these other parts of the population which I am trying not to judge their idealism or their ideas, but they think that wearing a mask is all part of some Brave New World Order conspiracy, and it's just a way to put the people in their place and let's get everybody on the same page so that the Rockefellers can come or the lizard people can rise from the ground or whatever it is. You know what I mean? There's quite a few people who believe that this whole thing is just made up.
But surely, in a professional way, there should be advisor in the government level to decide things like this. You should not let the people who has not got the relevant knowledge about the mask, yes or no.
Yeah, man. I mean, one thing I couldn't believe is, from day one, right? How come you could walk to your local grocery store and all the staff in store, they spend millions putting up screens everywhere, but you won't find a person wearing a face mask. Mm-hmm. The employers won't provide them to their employees who are working in the trenches. All these, these people that are out there every day living with it. Unless you're in a medical situation, they're not giving you a basic face mask. Now again, we're not talking about N95 masks or something that's medical grade. We're talking about the fact that if you put something over your face, and I hate the fact that I'm explaining this again, or I'm even talking about this again, but I am full of enough hot air, and I've spit on enough people, chatting absolute shit over the years, to know that if I put something over my mouth, I'm at least going to stop small particles from going out. Now, sure. whether or not I'm stopping all the spread from going, or whether or not I'm doing, it's not foolproof, right? Even if I put a bandana over my face, I know that I'm at least stopping the airflow coming from that direction, and it's going to do a bit of good. And if it can do even the slightest bit of good, I can't see the problem in wearing a mask. I just don't get it. I don't see why there's so many people that are for or against, and why it's become this thing that polarizes us. I have to resist. I'm telling you, I have to resist on a daily basis on arguing with people on Facebook. Friends of mine, not arguing, but even trying to put my point across, because I just think, it's just not worth it. If you think that, if you're so inconvenienced in your life that for less than £1 a week, you can put a small piece of cloth over your gob, mm-hmm. and it's going to possibly help anybody, one person, I don't care who it is, your neighbor's uncle's brother's nan who possibly might get infected, then why wouldn't you?
Yes, you will break the chain. If one or two people that stop the virus going, you will break the whole chain of reaction.
Yeah.
And you will not
bring this a little closer to you.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you won't notice how many lives you will save if you break that chain.
Yeah, I mean, even if, like I say, even if it's just a percentage, even if it's a small chance, I had somebody on Facebook who granted I haven't seen in person for quite a few years, but they're talking about, they believe that you shouldn't wear a mask, and what we're doing is we're just slowing the whole thing, we're stopping it all from happening, right? Mm-hmm. Like several people I know. Look, forget that. Better to get it now, get it over with. It ain't going anywhere. There's that mindset, which I think you might even have a little bit of that, right? Because
yes, it's the herd
statistically,
immunity.
right?
Yes,
herd immunity, yes. Or whatever you want to say, right? You know what I mean? However you want to call it. Mm-hmm. And you find that there are then other people that are part of that same sect that actually believe that COVID's all a conspiracy. It's all made up.
Yes,
it's no worse than the common flu, this and that. And I really find it interesting. I sit there at night, and I won't say it keeps me awake, but if I just think about human beings trying to rationalize, like, I don't know how people cope with crisis, right? You have blind denial, well, whatever, it just can't be it. And maybe that's the way you cope with it, like somebody who maybe copes with the fact that they're never going to die, so they just don't address it, and they compartmentalize it in some spot in their mind where they don't think about it because that's how they cope with it.
Or they think when it's time for them to die, it's time for them to die, yeah. Whether it's from the COVID or get hit by the car when you walk outside.
Yeah, or whether it's people who then go in the opposite direction and go on these big spiritual quests to find the meaning of life, and it's all about that. And I suppose this is the human journey, and this is what's scary at some points, but beautiful as well. Like I like the fact that that we have conversations like this now. I love it. But then on the other hand, I just think, oh my God, and I'm really trying hard. I'm really trying hard to go,
Yeah, so I think the bottom line is when we live in a society, we've got responsibility to each other. But if the freedom is used as an excuse or individual liberty is used as an excuse
Oh, yes, yeah.
not to wear mask, go to the COVID party, right?
So these COVID parties, you're talking about the kids that are taking the lottery or something like that? Is that what I saw?
No. So this COVID party is you go to the party with someone you know that have been infected. So you're trying to get the COVID
Right.
on purpose.
So it's people that want to get it now and get it out of the way.
Yeah, maybe, or try to prove a point that is not as scary as the authority tells us, or they just want to show that they're better than anybody else. I don't know. I don't know what they are thinking of going to this kind of COVID party when everybody is trying to stay safe, to be responsible individual in a society. So this is a big contrast between the West and the East. So in the East, everybody, you don't need a law to tell you to put a face mask on.
Yes. Yeah.
Already 99.99% of people do it themselves because they treasure their lives. They want to be a responsible individuals.
Sure, absolutely.
And if everybody do their part, the number shows. The number shows in Japan, Hong Kong, Taiwan. Okay, we're not talking about China because people say, "Oh, China's data is false. We can't believe anything from the Communist Party." Okay, let's look at Japan, Taiwan, Korea, Hong Kong, Thailand, where these are the typical Eastern countries that all wear face masks.
Yeah.
And the statistic shows a big difference already proven. So I just don't get it. Why are we still having this conversation about the mask now?
Yeah.
Especially now, obviously the British government is doing a part, not all of it. So in a public transport, in a supermarket, wear face mask, but in the pubs, in a restaurant,
Mate,
don't wear face mask. Okay, so it seems to me from the beginning that the government has done everything half-heartedly.
Yeah, of course.
Why is it? Is it because you can't blame me for having a conspiracy thought that the British government wants to allow this virus maybe as a population control?
Oh, sure. Yeah, no, I absolutely agree, right? So when you look at how they're producing, I think now, right, with the graduated opening, we clearly see in the UK, we see how it's going in America, opening up too soon. We see that their numbers are astronomical. We can see clearly that there are asinine situations. It's like you say, how are you going to open pubs before you open churches? For instance, right, or before you open, healthcare. Now, I know the theory is probably inside and stuff like that, or whatever, but you just can't make logic of it. And I agree with you. The thought process of a normal person then goes, well, maybe like I think now, they just want to open everything up. They want to get everything going. We know that we have the theory that you have to be able to cope with your medical services. Okay, and initially, when lockdown happened, and we thought that this was much worse than it actually would appear to be now, we were thinking, oh man, so we're going to shut everything down. We know that we're going to have this big first wave, and we don't want to take our hospitals and make them burst at the seams. We have to control the amount of people that are going to get sick, because we know people are going to get sick. We know it's a horrible virus or a horrible whatever disease you're talking about, however you're going to look at this. We have to make sure that the healthcare system is not overrun, right? Mm-hmm. Where now, if you look at America and you look at the UK, and if the UK are now looking at America, they see astronomical case numbers, and they can see that the healthcare system can still cope with it. So you have to, I think that there's probably somebody else.
Is it coping, really coping, or they are not dealing with the severe cases, or they're not dealing with the mild cases? Sorry.
Yeah, no, both.
That's not coping.
No,
that is just ignoring ignoring the mild cases and hope for the best.
Correct. But what I mean by coping is I mean that the hospitals aren't overflowing. There aren't people dying in the hallways.
True.
Right. So they know that they can handle it. So I believe that they made a decision. Let's open up. Let's do it. We're coping now. And if the shit really hits the fan and we get a huge, arguably, are we out of the first wave? If we get a huge second wave, or if the first wave continues to be, absolutely astronomical, then they can shut things down again. They can slow that influx of patients into the healthcare system and hopefully slow down the spread and be able to cope better. And in the meantime, build this herd immunity. I believe that's the theory. Now, I'd like to test that, or not test it, but I'd like to get somebody from government to actually sit there and go, right, guys, we're going to give you the benefit of a doubt. This is what we're doing, and this is why we're doing it. And I just don't think you're ever going to get that. I don't think you're ever going to get.
Because we all know the politician can't be truthful with the public. So if Nathan, if I look at this on another angle, yes, great. All this lockdown, all these preventive measures do save lives.
Yeah.
Do keep people from not having this virus. But what is the consequences? Is these consequences worth the lives that we saved today? What if the consequences will kill more lives in the future? So how do we see this lockdown, or against no lockdown or reopening now, maybe preemptively, but in the long run, you might save a lot more lives
if you continue to be locked down.
Yes, because I don't think there's any country can prolongedly survive a prolonged lockdown.
Yeah, well, this is the problem, and I think that, look, although I believe the UK coped with, economically, they've coped with the crisis the best that I've seen of most nations, right? So I think
no, we have not seen the. We've not seen the.
No, I'm talking about short term. I'm talking about short term, right? So they've furloughed, everybody who could be furloughed. They've given loads of small businesses lots of money to stay running or to have bridge gaps. They've got all these loan programs which we'll get into. Don't let me forget about that. Yeah, let's get back to the loan thing after we talk about this. But they've done a really great job of trying to. Of trying to help their citizens survive in the short term.
No, it's great.
What could have been really bad?
Has anybody asked where this money coming from? As quote, Theresa May, there is no money growing trees.
That's besides the point. So we'll get into that. We'll get into that when we talk about the loan thing here in just a second. But in the short term, they've done the best job that they could possibly do and have found out that the virus wasn't as bad as they initially thought. Now, I think the problem with a lockdown situation in somewhere like the West, as opposed to the East, is freedom is a banner that people will hide behind to get away with things sometimes. And people be like, I'd rather live free or die free than live chained or whatever, whatever the saying, the mentality I'm talking about, right?
Yes.
Now, I believe in freedom. I believe that we have amazing freedoms that I couldn't even compare to other places in the world. I believe that where I've been born, I'm one of the luckiest individuals on the planet because I've been born into a society and into a land and an area that is prosperous, and I'm able to get by. However, I think that people will use the excuse of freedoms to sometimes ruin a situation like lockdown. So I was shocked when we went into lockdown here. I couldn't believe daily the amount of people I saw outside walking by the house. And it goes back to this thing we were talking about with the government. There are so many people that will do... Okay, look at New Zealand as opposed to the UK. Mm-hmm. There are so many people that will do what they're told in certain situations. Okay, they'll look at it. They'll look at an idea or a rule, and they'll go, "Right, makes sense to me. I'm gonna follow the rules." Right. There are loads of other people, on the other hand, that'll go, "Nah, screw that," and they were out and about anyway, doing what they wanted. And there's no martial law when we locked down. We took it upon ourselves to look at our brothers and sisters in society and hope that everybody was going to get on the same page, right? And like I've said for years, unless a little green Martian flies down from Mars right now, lands in the backyard there, and on national television vaporizes the shit out of 12 people standing there watching them, nobody's going to unify against something, you know what I mean, right and wrong. You're still going to get people to go, no, they want to help us, or it's okay, they're here to do this, but the little green Martian might be here to vaporize the shit out of planet Earth as we know it. You see what I'm saying, right?
Yeah,
so how do you get people to unify together?
Education. That education is the key. Is that the government needs to be honest with the people.
Not only education, but trust.
Yes.
So I believe that's why it works so well in New Zealand. The New Zealand people, or people in New Zealand, government. They trust their leader, they trust their government, and they go, right, look, this makes sense.
Is it funny that the Western democracy countries has got the least trust on the government? How does it work when the democracy should be, the government is chosen by the people, but at the same time, they have got the least trust on the government? Isn't that funny?
I think it's ironic, and I mean, I don't know much about. I know enough to get myself around politics and around different structures in government, communism, socialism, all that kind of stuff. But I'm no expert. I can't see how human nature in any form can't be corrupted or can't be different.
That's great. Yes. So people need to understand no country is perfect. No race is perfect. There's good and bad people in every single race, every single country, every single system, whether it's going to be socialist or democracy. If they're man-made system, there's bound to have holes, corruptions, manipulations within it. So you just have got a different set of game rules. That's it. There's nowhere to say that one is better than another, one is cleaner than another. No, they're all prone to corruption. Yeah,
and this is the issue with why people probably didn't trust the initial reactions of how we're dealing with something like COVID, right? You'll have they might be small groups, but you'll have small groups of people that'll believe that like I said, that this is all a hoax. This is all made up. COVID. What's your take on, is COVID a lab born virus, or did it come from someone eating a bat?
No idea.
Right.
So let's not jump into conclusion. Let's wait for there's enough bright scientists around the world that will give us some kind of answers, because now there are evidence surfacing, different strains that that's one, or I think last week they already say that they already discovered some coronavirus, trace of coronavirus in March 2019 in Spain.
Oh really? I haven't seen that.
Yeah.
No.
So there's just so many different evidence surfacing up. So I don't want to jump in the conclusion whether it's a lab thing. So there's so much conspiracy that doesn't even make sense.
Yeah, but
the Wuhan lab is not even Chinese lab. I think it's a cooperation between France, America, and a Chinese private entity. It's not a Chinese. No, it's not a Chinese government lab.
I didn't know that. No, yes, I didn't know that.
Yes, and so would this Chinese government be so stupid enough to leak it in their own city?
Oh yeah, that's a different theory altogether.
Exactly.
Like for me, it's just interesting to me how, look, this thing spread, whether it came from a lab or whether it came from one person that caught COVID-19.
Yeah.
It's one person to now a worldwide epidemic.
Yes, it's intriguing that the bat eating story has been spread and spread and spread, and that there's zero evidence that eating a bat will catch you a COVID-19.
No, but I think that where that came from originally is the only place they could really find COVID-19 as a strain was in bats.
In a bat, yeah. But a bat could be eaten by a snake could be eaten by a human, like this. Because I think what I read some article, scientific article, is that from bat to human you need a middleman.
Right. Yeah.
So by just eating raw bat will not get you that COVID-19.
Well, although this is the theory, right? And this is what people are saying. So they're saying, so virologists, whatever you want to call them, whatever the correct pronunciation is, the theory that I read was that the virus has unnatural traits for a new virus that has jumped the spectrum now. So you're talking about this middleman theory, or this in between intermediary, right? And what they're saying is that's why they believe that it's definitely a man-made virus that's been there for a while, that's been given this attribute. Now the interesting thing for me is will it change? Are there two different strains? Is there a European strain and a Chinese strain?
Yes, because virus is like so it's like a living organism, and so you have they will evolve, and they will have a second generation, third generation, fourth generations, and cleverly the scientists have found the family tree as such. And what they have found, intriguingly, that the father and the grandfather is not the majority in China. In China, they talk about type C, which is like the grandson of the virus. That is the majority. 80% or 85% of the cases in China are this grandson. So already there's a lot of evidence built up that the virus didn't originate from the wet market, from the bat in Wuhan. But I think the narratives the media are pushing, they don't really care about evidence. They don't really care about facts. Yes, just like Donald Trump said, this is the Chinese flu. Is it to cover the incompetence of containing the virus pandemic in their own country? So they really want to shift the blame.
Yeah, sure. No, I think that's how that dude ran that whole entire smear campaign, if you will. It's hard to find accountability for mistakes in politics, and I think that accountability or lack of accountability that a lot of politicians will have is the biggest reason why we're incredibly cynical when it comes to politics, and why we don't trust them in the first place. Right?
It makes sense because this year is the election year, isn't it? And so for Trump to try to shift the blame everything China, because we're having trade war with this Huawei. So there's a lot at stakes at this moment. And then this COVID came, and Donald Trump made a lot of claims about how it's going to be. It's just another flu. Sure. It's going to magically disappear by April. We are going to be open by Easter, and shooting up in infections. You realize somehow within the body, those kind of things, and it doesn't look good.
No, of course.
It didn't look good, but for him and his campaign, he always needs an enemy to put the blame on.
Well, this is my theory when it comes to that, right? So one thing that confused me in the beginning of this is, okay, how do we have something? So for instance, we flew in March, right? I think you remember we went on a cruise in Miami, and the missus and I, we took off, and we knew that COVID was a thing, right?
Yeah, in January, yeah.
In March. In March, February.
So we already knew that COVID was a thing at the end of the January.
Yeah, but we flew in February, end of February into March. We went to Miami, and we were coming back through Heathrow, and there was a flight from Hong Kong that got off, and everybody on the flight from Hong Kong all were wearing masks, and their luggage carousel was right there with our carousel, and we were picking up our luggage together, and it wasn't until that particular moment when I went, wow, this is a thing, right? Now, my theory or not a theory, a question I had in the beginning was, why did the virus spread so slowly in China, right? Was it because of the way that they dealt with it in the East? Was it some big cover-up, like this whole thing with 2 million phone numbers going missing or whatever, and all that kind of stuff? Or was it actually the thing that we started to talk about in the podcast, which was the overwhelming responsibility that a member of society feels to protect those around them and to unify against a threat?
A threat, yeah, a common threat. And like you say, it's a community thing. that everybody feels that they are responsible for. Because one's action will affect others, will affect the other people.
Sure, of course.
And start a chain reaction. And so if we got a community that is willing to listen to the guidelines of the government, and with a government that is willing to look after the people in lockdown to make sure that they've got enough money, food, supplies, takeaways, medicals, assistance. So and they will take temperatures for you twice a day. And if they find out that you have got a fever, they whisk you to the hospital, isolation. Whoever you got contact with, isolation. And that's how they catch it before it spread.
Yeah, sure.
On the other hand, what do we have here? We got letter from NHS. If you're ill, stay at home.
And that came in like what? In April sometime?
April? Stay at home. If you're really ill, stay at home. Don't come to the hospital. Only when you have got breathing difficulty and you're dying, then call us.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how on earth are we supposed to have this virus contained? Yes, of course, the hospital may be not overrun because we have been ignoring the mild symptoms. So people catch it, they got over it, but they are spreader in the society.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are a virus carrier. So how on earth are we going to contain this virus and beat this virus? And then now we're talking about reopening already before even we have contained it.
Yeah.
And then what would you expect? What do you expect?
Yeah. Did you see the news story about they traced one girl to 72 cases in Hong Kong and she was asymptomatic? Did you see that one?
Is that in North England?
No, I didn't think it was North England. I thought it was in China.
In China, no, in China they have, I think in Wuhan, they have done I don't know how many millions of tests, and they have found about 200 cases that have been with no symptoms, no fevers, but they're
spreading.
They're positive.
This particular one, the girl took a trip. She was on holiday or something like that, and she flew back. She used the elevator in her tower flat, and she lived on whatever floor 30, and she was asymptomatic, but thought at the time, wearing a mask and the whole night, or not wearing a mask, but thought I should self-isolate because that's what was happening, and she was the only case in the tower block. Right? She was the only case, but how they found out about her case was she infected her boyfriend, who fell ill a few weeks later, and there was someone downstairs on like the second or third floor who also caught COVID and who was a symptomatic case. So her boyfriend was a symptomatic case, and this girl on floor 3 were symptomatic cases. And the only way they could have been exposed, because this was so early in the pandemic, was by this girl who came into the tower flat because she was the only case from traveling. This was in one of the areas outside of Hong Kong. And subsequently, from her asymptomatic case, there were 72 cases that they traced directly to her, without symptoms. So that was interesting, man. I was like, wow, you can be asymptomatic and still walking around and spreading it. I mean, viruses. I think we've had this conversation before. They're everywhere, man. Like there's all kinds of viruses. Good virus, bad viruses.
Yep. And virus will live on some surface for days.
Well, and this is another thing. This is why I'm freaking out and wiping everything down. And you'll see me disinfecting my hands like 6,000 times a day. I just don't understand. An interesting thing for me is one of the reasons that a few people I know have had the test is they've fallen down with a cold. They've fallen ill, right? And in a time when they're being incredibly careful, they're wearing masks, they're wiping down their groceries, they haven't gone out, and then you end up with a common cold, in the middle of quarantine and lockdown. Send away for a COVID test, it comes back negative. Now, there could be a theory that those tests are inaccurate, 70% inaccurate or whatever, but they haven't made anybody else sick and their families haven't fallen ill. But you managed to catch a cold at a time like this. You would think that, I don't know how it works from an epidemiology point of view, but when everyone's self-isolating and you're not exposing yourself to all these germs, like there are a few guys that are talking about how that's going to be worse for society overall. You have to be exposed so that your immune system stays strong, and all that kind of stuff. I just find it all fascinating. I think that literally, like, this is going to be the bridge to a new way of conducting ourselves and hopefully looking at health going forward. I mean, dude, I've struggled with health and with my weight and stuff like that my whole entire life. I've never taken it as seriously as I have just recently. No more sugar, no more BS. I got to trim the fat, man. I got to get down to a healthy weight, not just because I feel so shitty on the average day that I wouldn't know if I got it or not, man. Because short of breath, walking up steps, walking around, whatever, just general, well-being. I hope that this will be a bridge in society to people being more aware of how they conduct themselves and what they're putting in their bodies and what they're doing. And now whether it will be, I don't know.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think as as an individual now, we have got so much time to reflect on our lifestyle that what is most important than our health.
Yeah.
Yes.
How did you find that? How did you find? Because you had what, 10 weeks off, 11 weeks off?
I had 6 weeks off. 6 weeks.
Is that all it was in the end?
Yes, I think 6 or 7 weeks. Yeah.
Obviously, because you wanted to open up the restaurant or the takeaway.
The takeaway,
I should say restaurant.
Yeah. So takeaway, my trade is not one of the trade that has to be closed.
Yeah.
Mandatorily. But I still took the precaution for the sake of my family. I've got old and young in my family.
Sure.
And the staff were very, very worried about the high risk exposure every day, daily, on a daily basis. So we took the break and just step back and see. So I had a very this is my first time in my life that I haven't been working and just have 6 weeks off with the kids and spend 24 hours a day with the family.
Fantastic.
So this is a very valuable experience.
Yeah,
sure, so it's a very happy experience and give us a lot of time to reflect myself and on life in general and what do I want to do, achieve and the most important thing is just spend that precious time with the kids, with the three lovely kids, and being with them every single day, doing things with them.
I mean, for you, it had to have been good. God, you work hard, bro. You're 6 days a week. You're grinding.
Yes.
And to have that time is invaluable. It's really weird because there's a mix of experiences that I've had in the lockdown. Not experiences personally, but experiences that people I know have had in the lockdown. Some people have really reveled in the stopping, in the slowing down. Others have kind of not stopped at all. They're out there. They're key workers. They're out working in grocery stores or whatever. They have to because they have to keep rolling because of the financial situations and stuff we're talking about. And maybe they weren't furloughed or etc. And then you've got others that just like it's like business as usual. This is what my life is normally like anyway, except now I'm not going out to the store, It's crazy, like for me it's been great, just to we've taken up Fortnite as a family, right? Where all four of us sit there and we play in a squad on Fortnite and and that's what we've done. I probably have done 15 hours a week of that probably on average.
Wow.
And I've never played video games in my whole entire life, but it's there, and it's fantastic. So I think that's great, But okay, so that leads me kind of back to what we were talking about before. So before we forget about it, and we move away from COVID. If we move away from COVID, one of the things that I found so interesting about business. So you opened up after 6 weeks.
Yes.
You obviously had the business grants, etc. Like most of us who run small businesses in the UK, furloughs have been fantastic. I can't believe how the bounce back loan has worked in the UK. So a little bit of background on the bounce back loan, if you're from outside of the UK, is the UK government came up with a few schemes along this roadmap of coronavirus. Originally, they had what was called an interruption loan, whereas a small business, you could go and apply for I forget what it was, a quarter of your turnover or something like that, or
25% of the world.
Well, no, that's the bounce back loan, I think.
Right.
So, forgive us if we get this wrong. But an interesting thing that I found is for the two small organizations that I'm a part of, we tried to get that initial loan, and the banks completely swamped. They just couldn't deal with you. They had a backlog of 10 or 15 weeks supposedly, and then the government put this bounce back loan into place, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what I couldn't believe was they made it a self-certified process where anybody who had a limited company or was supposedly self-employed or a business bank account could get up to 50 grand just by saying, I think I'm going to do 200 grand next year.
Yes.
I mean, obviously it's not that simple.
It is.
Well, it was that simple. So I spent 80 hours on the phone, maybe 90 hours on the phone trying to sort out the first interruption loan. Couldn't get anywhere. Couldn't hear from somebody at the bank. And then when you did hear from somebody at the bank, now let's not forget, and as part of this explanation, that loan was 80% backed by the UK government. Right. So the default rate for the UK for a UK bank was, if you default on 100 grand that I give you,
20 grand.
My risk is 20 grand, right? And I'm going to get that back. I'm going to get 80% back from the government, and so it should be a no-brainer. I'm able to do a little bit of due diligence. Now, I'm not just saying you go willy-nilly and just anybody who comes and applies, you give it to. But when they made it 100% on the bounce back loan, banks would give anybody with a heartbeat and a business bank account that money. No due diligence, no nothing. You fill it out, and 12 hours later it was in your bank account.
So my question is the British government just opening up their coffers and begging people to take this money and hope that this money injection will kickstart the economy?
Yeah, I think it was a double-edged sword. I think that the approach was, let's take care of small businesses who are employing people. Let's give them a bridge gap, because we realize that the banks are going to be useless in helping someone who doesn't have credit or who doesn't have a high turnover but who has a couple of staff, right? So we're going to help them. I mean, they've been fantastic with the furlough program. They set the furlough program up. I've been absolutely astonished with how amazing the whole entire system has worked. Even though some people have complained about it, I think that they couldn't have done any better if they tried.
Oh, no doubt. Like I agree with you.
Yeah.
It's very, very generous. Actually, it's too generous. Too generous.
You think?
Yes. I think it's because on my days of self-reflection, I've been thinking a lot of things.
Yeah.
I've been thinking, how are we going to get over this? Even now, if we survive the COVID-19, how as a country, now we're getting out of the EU, the Brexit, we just got over the COVID. The English government, the British government have been opening the coffers and give out money like there's no tomorrow. And so everybody is enjoying themselves within this 10, 12 weeks with money that they haven't earned and with loans. So now everybody got all this money. But where is all this money coming from? And what is the future of the United Kingdom?
Yeah, and this is an interesting point. I don't understand, ashamedly, economics and finance enough to even be able to explain it to you. So there's the reserve that the government keep for wartime and for bonds, corporate bonds, and all that kind of stuff. There's those kind of things. I haven't got a clue how any of it works. And I really do want to get somebody in here who can explain that and who can actually talk about where it all comes from and what we do to get it back. Common sense dictates that it's going to be a raise in taxes. Inflation is going to be hyperinflated. And in essence, we probably are pushing ourselves into, okay, how does it work, bro? Like, we were talking about the stock market.
First of all, the bonds depreciate and maybe down to the euro 1 to 1.
Yeah. So with currency, that's a whole nother kettle of fish. What I'm talking about is, how is it that 4 months of most businesses being shut, the economy completely shut down, the NASDAQ hits all-time highs. The Dow is trading at just a little bit less than what it was trading at in
Yeah,
January,
with-
February.
With how many unemployment?
Like, how is that
How is
even
that possible? Because I think the U.S. government didn't they put 150 billion US or 1.5? The number is so big.
Yeah.
I don't even understand. Can make sense of how big the number is. 150 billion just printed out from nowhere, stuff it into the stock market.
Yeah, but okay, so that happens, but how is it that it can still be level when most businesses aren't even doing any kind of business at all?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Beat me.
Like
No idea.
that money. I mean, surely they're not grants. They're loans. So, for instance, these business interruption loans in the UK and even the other ones, they're not free money. They have to be paid back.
Yeah.
The furlough, okay, people could argue that the furlough is, taxes that you would have paid into the system, so you're going to take it back out temporarily. Mm-hmm. I'm surprised that the furlough has stayed until October, and there will be people that will take advantage of that. Obviously, there are loads of different, cases of restaurants not having employees come back because they're making more on the furlough and they don't have to do anything, so they don't want to come back.
Yeah.
Those kind of things. But I think the general thing that's come from it is they've done a fantastic job with what they've had to work with. So kind of, I guess, going full circle back to the conspiracy thing for me is it's interesting that there are these theories so like the cashless society theories, right?
Yeah,
like I've seen a few of these on Facebook where people are freaking out. Now I look at it and I go, dude, if I don't have to use cash, right, for let's say 5 to 6 months, just like wearing a mask temporarily, like I'm going to wear a mask temporarily. I'm not going to wear a mask forever, but I'm going to wear a mask temporarily while it does good. And if I don't have to, I'm not going to use cash or take cash. That's a filthy thing, right? And I was speaking to someone earlier that went, he says to me, he goes, do you think that they knew that this was coming and that's why they changed the English notes to the plastic notes, right? And I was like, damn, I don't know, man. Maybe they did know, But obviously that's not the case. It was a more hygienic note, and they'd had so many problems with counterfeiting the notes, and I think they have to do that every now and then just to stay ahead of the game anyway. Or do they? Right? That's like a very interesting thing, right? So these theories about cashless society, I can see people's concerns and fears, but for me, man, it's like if I don't have to do it for 6 months, that's fine. And if that carries on for a little bit longer, okay.
Yeah.
If notes and coins fall to the wayside, then it all becomes digital. Now that to me is also a very scary situation.
It is, yes, because every transaction is recorded and accountable for. Excuse me. And so one could argue that this is your freedom gone. This is a very dangerous step towards because everything's monitored. All your transactions monitored. All your spending habit is monitored. So there will be no privacy at all if we go into this cashless society.
Yeah, sure, and eventually your personal credit score becomes your identity, and that's found out when you're walking around and there's facial recognition everywhere.
And
so
then you go to school.
So I saw quite a few things in China where they were doing that, right? They were piloting some of these things, and
yes or no? So part of them is true that China is implementing you could say a advanced credit score. So in essence, it's like a driving license. You got points combined with your bank card, with your credit, your mortgages, all in one.
Right.
Okay. So, but it doesn't mean that you play more video games, you get less points, or you badmouth the Chinese government, you get less points. No, I don't think it's like that. But people like to speculate, especially the media with opinion pieces. Put it on the tabloid, and people read it, miss the big opinion head under, and thinks that it's fact because they read it in an English newspaper. And I think that's like you say, it's a pilot system. It only happened in a few cities as a test.
Yeah.
And the majority of Chinese people don't even know it exists. So is it such a BS when they say that you have got low points, so you cannot fly or you cannot get a train ticket?
Who knows? But it's a very interesting. The theories are. It's weird because some of the theories are sound, and then some of the theories are scary as anything, man. When you think about how they're going to work.
But is it any different than a credit score in here? So you had a credit card, you miss a few payments, your score went down.
No, of course, yeah, I don't think so.
So what's the difference?
But I still don't like the fact that it's tied into. I think there's comfort in anonymity, right? Anonymity.
I think it's an advancement. Advancement. Instead of having a few documents, you got your passport, you got your driving license, you got your NI card, you got a few credit cards. If you combine that into one account, one phone.
So when you get the chip embedded in your palm or your hand, are you going to do it if they offer it?
Yeah, yes or no, yes.
Yeah.
Because if you look at this way, if you live in a society, you're not getting out of the rule of the society. You cannot go to the bank. No, I don't play with your rule. I don't care about my credit score. Now you give me a credit card, regardless of my credit score. Will that work? I don't think so. So if you live in a society, unless you don't want to live in that society, you have to oblige by that culture, by that customs, by that rule. You can't just come into the country and say, no, I don't think your country system is
works
good.
Or doesn't work? Yeah, sure, of course.
Yes, it's against my human right. So you have to change it. No, so we could be critical of injustice, but we also have to be factual to understand where they are coming from, why they are implementing these kind of things. Because maybe you don't know about their struggle, you don't know about their problems in that society. That's why they have got this measure to be better, to make that society as a better place.
Efficiency,
for the majority. Isn't that the essence of democracy? The benefit of the masses, the majority. Even maybe in the expense of a minority.
Yeah, it is. I just think that, well, I don't know. I get too worried about it, right? I don't like the fact, I don't even like the fact now that you carry a credit score. I believe in having an ID. I believe in a credit score. Actually, I believe in a credit score, but I don't like the fact that it's something you can't shake or that that's going to be a reflection of you as a human being. However, I feel that it's a necessary part of, as you say, living in a structured society that has a way to barter for goods, provide credit, etc. There are loads of theories, though, like the promissory note of signing your name and all that kind of stuff. When you look at people who look at these kind of deep state conspiracies who talk about it, I find it incredibly interesting. I find it incredibly interesting that gold is where it's at, and that, you know, that what has value, what doesn't have value. And one of the things that this kind of COVID thing has shown me is what happens if society really does break down, or if this is the beginning.
Yes.
What do you need? What do you need currency wise? Is your house your house? Is what you owned by you, and that's all. It's always going to be that way forever. You know.
Yeah. I think it's a warning for those people who thinks that their lifestyle now is given and is safe.
Yeah.
And they can do whatever they want, and they enjoy anarchy. They want anarchy, anti-social. They want to anti-government, anti-this, anti-that. They want to be activists. Yes, it looks cruel.
Yeah,
it looks cool, but in reality, what you're doing is very, very dangerous. You're shaking down the foundation of a safe society, of the society that your grandfather's father built up on. A lot of million people sacrificed for your lifestyle today. So it would be such a shame for you just to throw it all away, and for some ideology that doesn't even exist.
Right, exactly. Yeah, because it hasn't existed even from tribal times, I would imagine, right?
No, so unless you live alone on a private island, then fine, do whatever you want. Yes,
and it's a proper Lord of the Flies situation. Every time you put a group of people together, they're going to have to figure out a way to make things work. that to me is very interesting, and it's a point that I hear people make all the time, and when they make it, I think it's fantastic. I wish I could put it forward myself. I never can kind of get into it and explain the reasons why.
Yeah, so that we have, because why do we have a group of people like this when we have got a very good foundation in education, that I would expect all this new generation will grow up with this education in mind. They will be better and better than the last generations.
But here's the thing. So like I was talking about before, these are people, the people that will wear a mask or won't wear a mask, they're the same people. We have the same educations for the most part. We come from the same places. But their experiences in life are completely different than what I have, right? With the same education, the same background, we can look at the same set of facts. So for instance, like there will be a snapshot on the news or on social media that will say something to the effect of, okay, currently at the moment, you're talking about 3 million cases in America, which is like roughly 1% of the population or something.
Yeah.
And one person will look at that and go, oh, that's amazing. It's 99% good, safe, no problem. Let's carry on with business as usual. And then another person from the exact same background, exact same education, mostly the same life experiences, will look at that and go, oh my God, that's 1%. 1%, and it's rising, it's getting bigger, and it's coming for us. That kind of thing, right? I find it interesting how you can, again, mentally look at a situation and either have complete denial about how you're going to cope with it.
Because in that scenario, that is arbitrary. So 1% doesn't mean anything. But because there's nothing to compare to. So like for like comparison is a good way of telling how good or bad things are. So if you look at America, it's 1%. So we find another country that is similar size to America and look at their percentages. So in China, maybe you're talking about 0.1%. Then suddenly, shit, in America it's 100 times worse.
Right.
So now that is a like-for-like comparison. So if you just look at 1%, like you say, one people thinks it's good, one people say it's bad, because arbitrary. There's no comparison. There's no point of reference to compare to.
But that's what I find interesting, though, right? I think that it's interesting that people who are similar, from similar educations, one may go, anarchy's the way of the future. I'm going to put myself in this little island in wherever, or I'm going to be part of this group that took over Seattle or whatever that was in the States, right? And they may think that that's a great idea, and let's burn this fucker to the ground. Let's rebuild it all again. And then there's people that are very similar from the same backgrounds that look at it and go, wow, that doesn't make any sense. I'd much rather, work hard and do what I've got to do, pay taxes, live in a society, benefit from healthcare, benefit from great schools, flourish, all that kind of stuff. It's amazing to me how people don't always just want better. It's an interesting thing. One thing that I learned about this week that I didn't know about was I didn't know about decreasing populations like Japan. Mm-hmm. They have this problem with the population shrinking year by year.
Yep.
I had no idea that was even a thing. Yep. And I didn't even consider the effects, the knock-on effects that would have in society. Mm-hmm. It's like if you look at generations past, we've always done the best we can, and it's always the children who are then going to come along and continue to grow what we've built upon, and therefore take care of their elders. Mm-hmm. And then the next generation will then, prosper more and take care of their elders, etc. And then you look at somewhere like Japan that has this shrinking population, and now all these potential problems with paying for the generations they have. Yeah. For me, that's amazing. And apparently, the fertility is going
very
down.
Very low, still very low. Yes.
But all over the world, they're finding that it's slowed down quite a bit.
Like toilet break.
Toilet break. All right, go for it. So I'm going to keep waffling on while you use the restroom. But yeah, when I was reading about this article in Japan, it was something that I wasn't really aware of, and I didn't know that they had the the most centurions of any population. So along with this recent health kick that I've been on, I've kind of been looking at different diet combinations and different things like that, and that's where that had come up. And for me, it's fascinating. It's a culture that I just think is incredibly interesting. I've always wanted to kind of go to Japan and check it out and see how they deal with things. And one day, hopefully, I'll be blessed enough to actually do that and see how they work their whole situation there. So along with this, it's fascinating how people can have different opinions about the same thing that you see. You can look at something, one person says the glass is half full, the other says it's half empty, and who's right, who's wrong, what do you look at, how do you look at it? I find it all fascinating. So that's me waffling on there, and I kind of went off tangent to what's right and what's wrong, and how two people can look at the same thing and see two different things. It's just it's an interesting situation, you know.
Well, I'll get back to that. Quite a long question. I think I got some opinion about that, but before that, I want to talk about this Japan. Like you say, the newer generations tends to have less children.
Yep.
And this is the observation for last decade or two.
So is this similar with China, right? So China
and Hong Kong,
right?
Especially in Hong Kong now, is that the people are getting married later and later, and their decision, a lot of them, they don't want to even have one children. There's a couple of reasons why. Life is getting harder. That's one. The house price are going up and up. The houses are getting smaller and smaller. So a couple in Hong Kong may use £500,000 to buy a 250 square feet flat.
Right.
So imagine 200 square feet, just a little bit bigger than here, and that will include your kitchen and toilet. So imagine raising a family in this situation.
In this room.
Yeah. So you're talking about 30 years of mortgage. Both of you have to work full time. And so how do you expect to raise a family in this kind of situation?
Sure.
And then the second, if there are more wealthy people, maybe their parents handed down a big house for them, but they still want to enjoy lives. They want to go on holiday. They want to do this, accomplish their goals, bucket list before they get down to have children. But by that time, it's quite late. And we're seeing people in their 40s and having children when they are 40s. And one is enough in Hong Kong, especially, even though you are free to have as many as you want. But most of the family just settle with one and invest in just one of the child.
Yeah.
On the other hand, in China, as you know, they had a one-child policy for a while. I think a couple of years ago, I can't remember exact date, they relaxed that to 2. But that is still not the specific, because if you are minorities, ethnic minorities, that the restriction doesn't apply to you. If you're in rural China, that restriction doesn't apply to you either.
Really?
Yes. So the one-child policy that you hear all the time actually was just for the people in the city. And if you are rich, no problem. If you are willing to pay for the second child, pay the fine, pay for the education, pay for the health system, you're fine. So there are like a lot of stories that they say that they'll drag you, get you aborted, this kind of story. Maybe there's one or two is true in a 1.4 billion people country.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. But in general, if you are financially able, there's no problem to have 2, 3, 4, 5. And there are people that have got multiple children in China. But I think in China now, society is the same as in Hong Kong when they are developing. They want to accomplish their dream life goals. They want to do things themselves, and they don't want the hinder of children. As you know, when we have children, a lot of things get limited.
Sure, of course.
Yeah, so your life get completely stopped for the next 18 years. And so a lot of them don't want that sacrifice.
Yeah.
But for me, I want children from very young age, and I want it as soon as possible. So when they are 18, I still got a couple of years, hopefully, to enjoy myself.
Yeah, see, I never thought about that kind of stuff. You know, I always knew I wanted to have a family, but I never put any kind of pressure on myself to do anything before a certain age. I mean, it's weird. Like sometimes when you're 18, you think that life is going to be completely different by the time you're 28, right? And now I find myself sitting here at 44, and I go, wow, it didn't turn out quite the way I thought it was going to turn out, but I never planned it. You know what I mean? And kids are like that. You know,
Yes,
as you know, I've got two kids. I've got 7 years between them, 8 years between them.
Yeah,
I didn't
brave
think,
man.
Yeah, I didn't think the second one was coming along, you know, and when it did, it was fantastic. When we made the decision that that's the way of the future, and I just think that it's great, you know. But I'm always very envious of I've got several friends who had kids when they were 18, and by this time they've got kids that are out of college and they have their own careers, and they're kind of in this. They're at the same age that I am with younger kids.
Yeah, and they're done.
But then on the other hand, I see other friends. Like I know somebody who's 54 and they've just had their first child.
Wow.
And I think, wow, man, it's what an interesting part of the journey to kind of go to that age and be in that place.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden become a father, and then obviously there would be issues with being an older father or an older parent and stuff like that, but that's no big deal. I think in this day and age it's probably a usual thing to happen and par for the course. So yeah, that kind of stuff's pretty cool. But the shrinking population thing, I just never thought that could even happen.
Yeah.
I just always assumed that. Based on what I know, everybody I know who has kids have 2 or 3 kids. Very few people have just one child. And it just seemed to me that it was one of these things rather that just happened. I just assumed population growth. Yes. was always how it was going to be everywhere.
I think in a socialist society, you will expect the population to grow. Yeah. Because everything's provided for.
Sure.
And that's what you will expect in a socialist country. On the other hand, in a capitalist country, you would expect it to not grow as much as a socialist country, because everything is you have to pay for.
Yeah, crazy.
Education, healthcare, insurance, everything. Yeah, so you would expect that, but it seems like it's on the contrary.
Yeah,
and yes, it's fascinating. Yes. So, do you want to talk about the Black Lives Matters in the U.S. and what's going on now? And
yeah, I mean, I've kind of discussed a few things about it, and I've talked about it on previous episodes. One of the episodes I just did. I mean, I'm more than happy to. I mean, I'll talk about anything. It's an interesting situation. I don't know what your take on it is.
Do you think there's any conspiracy behind it? Why suddenly there's from a case that happens every single day in America? Just from this particular one, and it exploded to nearly a worldwide movement.
No, I don't think it's a conspiracy. I think it basically was a young lady who was able to capture it on social media, this horrible event, and I think that it was just the perfect storm leading up to it, right? It was a mix of everything. It's a mix of everybody being in lockdown. It's a mix of it happening for years. It's a mix of the way the situation has played out in society over the last 200 years, 150 years to 50 years to now. People are still surprised that these kind of things would go on in society. And for me, it's not a conspiracy. It's just kind of the right place at the right time. It's something that everybody has seen and has experienced. I mean, I talked about it with a previous guest that I had on here, Christopher, and I think everybody in their life, you've experienced it. People have been racist to you for being Chinese, I'm sure. Everybody's experienced some sort of racism, whether it's on the giving end or the receiving end. And the giving end, those lines have kind of now, instead of being blurred, they've now become very stringent black and whites, right? So the giving end might not necessarily be you being firsthand racist to someone, this dude or that person or this, or making a joke or an offhand whatever. It might be, it could be something like me laughing at a Chinese sketch on TV, someone making fun of Chinese or making fun of black people, and I think it's hilarious, right? Or vice versa, right? And you could blur the lines with comedy, and you could say, "Oh, I only laughed at that because it was funny at the time," when really intrinsically, that whole entire sketch or a whole entire situation could actually hurt someone's feelings. You know, it could be detrimental, and it could have racist connotations. And so I think that with the perfect storm and with the way things have kind of worked out now, it's becoming a situation where it's more at the forefront of what people experience, and it's just like what we were talking about with facts before.
Is just that, or do you think there's other elements in there? Racism, social injustice, poverty, corruption within the police forces.
These are all contributing factors to this new. I don't want to use cliche terms like this new woke movement or this new way of being. I just think that they're all contributing factors to people opening their eyes and realizing that, look, we can't have this kind of stuff go on in society anymore. We can't have it. It's unacceptable for a situation to go down like that. Now, okay, there will be all kinds of factors based around it. So bad neighborhoods, schools, all this kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, you cannot accept that one man can be put to death in the name of justice, more than likely, just because he had history with the fella and you know,
sure.
and that guy was potentially racist, right?
Sure. But on the other hand, on the point of view of the police is because of the gun law in America, everybody is potentially a gun carrier.
Yeah, totally.
So from the point of view of the police is, what do you expect me to go in less heavy-handedly? Risking my life. I'm risking my life, not your life.
Yeah, so it depends on what we're talking about. So again, this is where the lines have kind of been blurred to how it goes. So my feelings are, and I haven't really changed my mind on this since this all began happening. You know, this whole everyone being aware of it. I think that the majority of all interactions that the police have in America are positive interactions, and done on the right side of societal law, right? So I think that I know that these incidences will happen. I know that there'll be incidences of police brutality. I know there'll be guys that snap because they've been dealing with all kinds of crap, and it may go down in a bad way or a detrimental way. But I believe in my heart that it's all positive. That's mostly positive, right? There's going to be bad apples along the way, and there's probably going to be lots of things that need to be changed as far as policies and procedures. But I have to believe that overall, these guys are in a very difficult situation. So we talked about, you know, you're mentioning gun laws and guns and stuff in America. Obviously, that's a whole nother set of discussion and stuff when you talk about the right to bear arms or not bear arms.
We're not talking about that. But we're talking about the reality of the danger the police force in America will face.
Correct.
And hence the heavy-handed in handle the situation is warranted because every suspect are a potential life threat to the police.
Yeah, so absolutely. Like, I think now this whole wanting to tie, you know, I think there are several police forces that are like, you can't use any kind of chokeholds. You can't put your weight on someone when you're detaining a person and all that kind of stuff. I think that they're probably going well overboard with some of the laws. Look, in any given situation, these guys need to be trained to be able to handle a situation. And there are going to be situations when there's a dude who can kick the dog shit out of 4 police officers, even if they're trying to tase him and even if they're all trying to detain him, they can give those guys a serious run for their money. I think one of the problems that's come from this is you clearly see that there are like, dude, I'm not going to be a police officer. I'm not in enough shape to be out there on the force. There are guys that are like as big as me that are police officers running around with a gun on their belt and who've been on the force for 20 years and probably couldn't run a 15-second, 50-yard dash or whatever. You know what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
Like, so I just don't see that. I think there needs to be more training. I think that I always get the impression, and this is something you may get or may not get. One interesting thing for me is whenever I've gone to other countries and I see a police officer, I usually see someone who looks like a military man standing there. Like, for instance, I go to Belgium. You go to Belgium and you have dealings with a police officer there. That dude is in shape. That guy clearly has spent a lot of time training, and you don't see different kind of body types. They all look like trained individuals who are properly there to do a job, right? And I got to be honest with you, just like I don't want a large fireman trying to save me from a building, right? I want somebody who can handle themselves. I believe that the police are in a situation that's very much the same. Those guys should have to have constant training, both physically and situationally. So they have to be able to deal with the situations, right, properly. They have to know how to handle themselves. They have to be judo experts and know that one-on-one they can detain someone in a
non-lethal
lethal or non-lethal manner. They have to know, man. You have to know the difference between when I'm choking a man to death or when I'm putting him to sleep or when I'm doing what I got to do or vice versa. They have to know that. And the only way they can know that is to train it and to live it, right? And what I don't see is I don't see that happening on a widespread thing. I definitely don't see it in England. And I doubt I see it in America. I'm sure there are exceptions to the rules. Don't get me wrong, right? There'll be guys who personally want to show up to work and be in shape and know what they're doing and all that kind of stuff, and we'll take that time. But just like any other job or position in any industry,
it should be standard.
Their standards have to be set to a certain level. And I can't see how in a situation where these guys are in dangerous situations, there's potential gun threats, there are loads of police officers killed every year, and we don't even hear about it, and they have to be able to take care of business. We live in a society that needs police. That's all there is to it.
Exactly. Every single society needs policing. So like you say, there might be a few bad apples in the police force. So it is so very naive for the Americans to call for the abolish of the police just because there are a few bad apples.
Yeah, well, this is the thing we were talking. I had talked about with Christopher previously as well. Is this whole defund the police thing? People have very skewed lines on what that means to them. So some people may look at defunding the police as screw it, we don't want police anymore. We want to police ourselves, that kind of thing. Which I think is just a crazy idea. And others may say, well, we need to defund the police, as in they don't need tanks, they don't need this kind of stuff. They need to take their funds and allocate them to better things like training or community programs or whatever, right? There are a couple of different, I guess, thought processes on what that means. However, my understanding of what they were asking for initially is it's going to be a situation very similar to what we were talking about with people crying out for anarchy, who don't really understand at the end of the day that what you're asking for when you say defund the police, we don't want police.
What are you asking for? Yes.
Is they don't get the severity of what they're actually standing for. And that's...
So in your mind, that you don't think there's any groups responsible or blowing this thing out of proportion at all?
Again, I'd like to think that there's nobody blowing it out of proportion. I'm sure there's going to be several different theories about whether they're conspiracy theories or, So here's one.
Okay, I'll give you some facts. Fact. Black on white brutality crimes. There. Yeah? Mm-hmm. White on black. There. Black on black. There.
Right.
So what we're talking about that in the grand scheme of things. And because of that, on one case, that is blown out, I would call it like it is. It's blown out of proportion, spread across the United States and across the world as well because of that.
Now, look, I don't know if those facts are accurate. I think, look, black on black crime exists. White on black crime exists. Black on white crime exists. I don't know what the facts are. And almost like I don't know what the facts are for daily infection rates for COVID, and I can't fact check them myself. Mm-hmm. I have to believe that that even a statement like that, even though there might be truth in it, I have to believe that there still has to be a common ground of irrespective of color, when it comes to crime, what we were looking at is we're looking at external factors, that lead to the fact that this particular incident just highlights a problem that you may have if you're a person of color in society, which is being pulled over more by the police, which is being in potentially different situations that I might not experience or someone else might experience. So this is all highlighted how people have been how people have been saying for quite a long time that this is what's happening, this is what's going on, and people have turned a blind eye to it.
So I understand the grievance, but so what is your take on releasing this grievance on looting, setting fires to?
Well, that's different. That's a completely different thing.
But the excuse are, this is not looting, that is looting. What we're doing is expressing our anger at the society.
Yeah, that's a different
that
thing.
they have been doing to us for the past 150 years.
No, so again, so that's not. I don't
those
think,
kind of things are really screwed on the moral.
Okay. So there's two things. So one is all the looting and the riots weren't done just by black people. They were everybody out there doing it, right? It wasn't predominantly one.
Oh no, I'm not saying it's black people, but it's done on the name of the Black Lives Matter.
No, but what I mean is, so it's done in the name of Black Lives Matter, but I believe that the initial thing was those were meant to be protests. So I'm all about protests. There's a difference between people out there protesting,
Yes.
and then all these morons that come along and they're looting. Now, for me,
But the difference are you condemning the lootings, or you are justifying for the looters.
well, that's going to depend on what side of the battle line you fall.
No, there's only, I think there's only one way, like you say, one way of doing it. Protesting is good. Peaceful protest, no problem. All up for it. But as long as something's done breaking the law, looting, setting fire to building, hitting civilians.
There's no.
You should draw a line already, immediately.
Yeah, the problem is, and this is a difficult thing, this is why I would never want to be a police officer, and I would never want to be in charge of a situation where I had to run a group of people who are going to stop a potential protest turning into a riot, okay? If there's a protest that then turns to this whole crowd mentality of we're going to start picking up stuff, like for instance, there were all these pallets of bricks all over the place when this all happened. Coincidental, probably.
Maybe.
But maybe not. Who knows, right? There are all these theories about whether or not it was started intentionally, whatever. Irrespective of that, if I had to be in charge of a group of people to protect somewhere, I have to make a decision at what point is there a protest happening where within that protest there are a couple of bad apples. So one of the things that I look at when I see a situation like that is, as a protester, you have to be prepared to stand for what you believe in. Unfortunately, you also have to be prepared to be putting yourself in an environment which could ignite like a fire in a heartbeat and become a very violent and horrible situation. Okay.
And unfortunately, if you're in the wrong group, you're under immense peer pressure to follow along.
Correct. So my take on this is, though, and this is where I wouldn't want to be involved in this, is I think as soon as it goes to a destroying businesses or homes or whatever, where it gets out of hand, I believe that the police are then justified to go in and just start breaking kneecaps and doing whatever they got to do. And I say that in that way. They use whatever physical force is necessary to dissipate the situation
and protect.
Right.
To protect your innocence.
Yeah, not whatever physical force within a reason. You know what I mean? I'm not saying they go in and they start, killing people or whatever, but I'm saying they should be able to be stronger about how they do it. Bring in the freaking water cannons, do whatever you got to do, break it up. Now, if at that time there are protesters that are there, that are still around and are still in this crowd mentality, well, then you go from being a protester to a a looter or a
rioter,
and that's unacceptable.
It's a shame to see Korean towns, Chinatown, that people have to take their own guns to go to rooftop to protect their property.
Yeah, it's horrible, man.
So the government, the National Guard, the police cannot. You're telling me in America, the governments, the police, the National Guard cannot protect their citizens' property, lives, safety.
Now, I mean, yeah, America's a different kettle of fish compared to where you see protests other places in the world. I mean, look at the protests that we've seen in France with the yellow vest guys and stuff like that, right? I think there's always going to be situations like this. It's horrible that that people have to take that initiative to protect their own, but the facts are, when that shit hits the fan, there's not enough resources to actually, it's a minority of, and by minority I mean a number. It's a small number of people keeping law on a larger number of people, and they can't cope. They just can't cope. They can't be everywhere. They can't do what they got to do. It's like a one against many situation automatically, and the police are already on the back foot. And in this case, they're on the back foot because everybody's pissed off because it happened in the first place. Rightly so. That they're pissed off that they watched it happen and that nobody stepped in. None of his colleagues stopped him and went, dude, what are you doing here, man? This is wrong. You're killing this man, obviously. Take a break, tap out, I'll take over. All the things that are involved in that, I mean, when I saw the video the first time, and there was a gentleman there going, what you doing, bro? Look, you're killing him. And he was explaining, I know these guys, and I couldn't believe that what I was seeing. There were people there that actually saw it happening, and we're too afraid to take action, whatever it may be. But I couldn't believe it. I still can't believe it. Even thinking about it, even thinking about watching it and seeing it all go down. And so for me, I just think it is a justified response that people are upset about it. I think that it can swing in separate directions. So I guess back to the question about whether or not it's organized by a certain organization. Bro, who knows? Who knows?
Because one of the reasons why I brought it up, because that this incident shares many similarities with the Hong Kong riot, with the Ukraine revolution. The police are demonized, and be attacked on, and then portrayed as the bad guys, and then start off this revolution. It's happening in Hong Kong as well. And is it fact? Yes, one or two bad apples. Yep, you got a picture, you got a video to show one or two police step on a protester's head.
Sure.
Yes, one or two apples. But there's 30,000 police looking after 7.5 million people, and the police force has been demonized across the world, and victimized as well. And so now they're using the police brutality as an excuse for this movement, that movement, asking the government to step down, asking this to resign, this and this. So is it coincidence, or we are going along the same plot?
Yeah, I don't know. And an interesting thing about it is I don't know what you do to fix it. Now, is it a coincidence that people don't discuss it properly? Where we get the information is always going to be just another news story. And then from the news, we then have a mass opinion which manifests itself in this outcome of getting rid of the police.
And the news play a big part as well.
Right.
Don't for 1 second pretend the news is impartial and unbiased and that they have got a narrative to push. So if they want you to hate the police, they will do everything they can to smear the police. They will use that angle to attack the police or attack the government or to push that narrative.
Sure, and that's a very interesting thing about all of this, because it's unfortunate that the leading thought in some of these movements isn't one of your own. So it's a narrative that's been played to you, and you get on board with that narrative, and it's only because your bandwidth at the moment, your scope on how you look at life, is you can become hyper focused on a cause or on an enemy, or look at the people who hate Trump and they become hyper focused on it. Like I know you probably know some people. I know several people who they become hyper focused on the man and what he could be doing, and everything else in life just doesn't seem to be the same because there's this tyrannical character who's now running the country, and it's my country that I see falling apart and blah blah blah, right? Because they become hyper focused on the wrong part of a situation, where there are other people that will look at Trump and they'll think the best thing that's ever happened, and they become hyper focused on
Yes.
what he does.
It's called confirmation bias.
Yes, and this confirmation bias goes on all kinds of subjects, whether it's racism, whether it's global warming, whether it's putting on a freaking mask, whatever. And the only way that we can move forward is by not just getting the narrative. So this is an interesting thing about why I wanted to do the podcast and why I want to talk to as many people as possible. One byproduct of that is most of us are all getting our information from the same people or the same media in the same place. So what I'm doing is I'm getting different takes and different opinions on it all, and I'm hoping to come up with some sort of a resolution in my own mind and my own conflict to kind of move forward with it. So I don't know, man. Like it's strange, isn't it?
Oh, it's interesting. So you need to free yourself and not to just believe in one or two news source or even any news source, and you have to look at the whole world, analyze the situation, and just see beyond the topic, maybe the bigger picture within it, and you will find most of the time that the news media have got, like I say, a already predetermined conclusion they want you to form. So already they're pushing you, they're guiding you, they're focusing on you to form their conclusion, but they will let you make you think that you came up with that conclusion.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing to me as well that look, the news, we say that the news are steering a narrative, right? I'm also hyper aware that most news reporters or most news stations probably are full of people who are exactly like you and I, who are looking for nothing more in life than drama, than a story. And that story can be anything. Fortunately or unfortunately, the story 9 times out of 10 is one of negative connotation, and it's one of bad news instead of good news, right?
Yeah, because that sells. Conflict sells.
And I try to not I don't want to believe that there's like a man behind the curtain, like the great and powerful Oz, who's driving the whole thing.
Well, unfortunately, if you chase up who owns the most media corporation, you will find that there are few powerful individuals that owns them all.
Yeah,
and so.
But I would hope, I'm not going to say that these individuals don't use their companies and their corporations to their own devices. So, for instance, to influence campaigns or friends, companies, or what it could be anything, agendas, political agendas. But unfortunately, the news is used as a tool when it comes to that kind of thing, because they actually have they're in touch with the people, right?
Because they got the most powerful weapon.
But again, when it comes to the news, even though I'm cynical and skeptical about the news that we get and the quality of the news and the quantity of that news, I still have to look at it and go, well, maybe a lot of it, or I hope that a lot of it's just human error, and it's just lack of information. Because another interesting thing for me is how many firsthand reports of a situation do you get? In any situation, right? So let's say you and I see a UFO land in the back garden. Again, I'm back to things happening in the back garden. Little UFOs coming down to the back garden. How many news reporters will come and take our story? One, and then maybe everybody else takes that news reporter's story and spreads it. Like a virus, misinformation. Yes. You have a take on it. I saw the green man, you saw a little blue man, you talked to 2 reporters, one was green, one was blue. Then the story becomes, allegedly, there were little men.
So let me try this. So according to news, this, and apparently Nathan and Alan saw a green UFO or maybe blue, someone says blue, and landed on their back garden. Keyword, according to, apparently.
Oh, sure, of course.
Supposedly. You will see this. This is the new standard. This is the standard of Western media. They got no accountability because they have protected themselves.
Correct.
So what kind of news is this? It could be a complete fabrication of a creative writing. If you just write, we just put all these words into it. There's no factual, no fact check.
Well, this is an interesting thing that I have a theory about when it comes to the fact that news companies are all just businesses. They're all just a channel. They were originally newspapers. Then they were channels, and they all have revenue in mind, and they all have stories in mind. I mean, look at YouTube, for Christ's sakes. YouTube is a bunch of different clips from, if you look up the BBC stories, or you get news feeds on there, there's 15 stories from ITV about the same story. There's 15 different video clips all about the same story, and it's all about driving revenue, etc. The news should be, or not should be, but ideally would be impartial to politics, to all kinds of things, and just report facts and opinions about those facts from credible places, right? You will never actually have that happen because they're all still a business at the end of the day. So how do you get around that? So I've tried to dream of this and a way to crack it for forever.
Yes. So you can't. So it's like a BBC. Then the people say, oh, it's a state media. So state will use it to brainwash people. It spread propaganda. So you can't use state.
Yeah, that's what I mean. This is the problem. And then what do? Do you take an organization like Facebook and do you let the news be run by?
And still, unfortunately, that is a private entity again.
No. But what I'm saying is an organization that has a touch point with the world.
I see.
So say for instance, how do you then not dilute, or how do you distill a story? Filter a story to see the actual facts of what happened. So there may be 99 accounts of an event, and 97 of those might be right. There might be 2 of those 99 that saw something completely different, and then that could have been what was right or what was wrong. So do you go with the majority and then you report it that way? There are several different problems within the news that I what I'm saying is I can't just blame the news for it, right?
Is there a website that they're doing now that people ask questions and multiple sources people will answer that questions politically or scientifically or so? Is there something that you think that a platform?
I'm sure there are. There are discussion groups. There are stuff like that. I mean, I've like I said, I've tried to figure out a way of doing it for a long time. But again, at what point do you then have 115 opinions about assholes and they all stink, right? You know what I'm saying? Armpits and assholes. Opinions are like armpits and assholes. We've all got them and they all stink, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do you weed through the chaff? Is it just overwhelming opinion that then becomes overwhelming fact, which then becomes a news story? So let's say, for instance, you have something like a war, and you have 2 different sides reporting on that war, on who's right and who's wrong, or what's going on, or what the facts are. How do you then, you have to then digest that as an individual, just like you have to digest the news on a daily basis, and take what you're going to take from it anyway.
Yeah.
So I guess that goes back to what I was talking about before, how you can take a meme of facts and figures, and 2 people can see it completely differently.
So that will tie in very, very nicely if you got time to talk about Hong Kong's national security law.
Well, this is one of the things I wanted to ask you about, because if there's anybody I know who's going to know about the situations in Hong Kong and what's going on now, it's going to be you. So could you just elaborate on that? And
I'll do it quite quickly. So, like you say, there are some people to think that Hong Kong having its national security law is a bad thing, because that will break the one country, 2 system. Hong Kongers will lose their freedom, etc., etc., etc. But on the other hand, there are still a lot of people, but the Western media doesn't pick up on that they want peace back in Hong Kong. This national security law will not affect 99.99% of the people in Hong Kong. but they will give the peace back. We don't want yellow vest protester, rioters running through Hong Kong for another 6 months.
So the national security law, just get to the bare bones, explain it to everybody,
Right.
What that is, please.
Okay, yep. So the Hong Kong Region National Security Law is a law that protects Hong Kong to be able to prosecute any treasons, any people separatism, treasons, terrorisms. So basically, those 3 or 4 particular crimes to incite disorder against their own country.
Yeah.
So if normal, so it doesn't take away your freedom of protest. It doesn't take away your freedom of speech. It doesn't affect your day-to-day normal lives if you just behave like a normal citizen. No country in this world will allow treason, right? Mm-hmm. Tell me one country that allows treason in the name of freedom. Is there one?
Not that I know of.
No. So is there a country that hasn't got national security law? Some kind of national security law? And which country consult their citizen on national security law? I'm sure the UK hasn't. After 9/11, when they up the national security, passed a few laws to contain terrorists within how many days, and whip them to some secret.
Sure, there's no surveys or there's no consultation with the people at all. You would take the representatives that would make the decision.
So is it a very double standard hypocrisy when you accuse China or not consulting the people of Hong Kong about national security? When we have security law, the US have 20 plus national security law. So why not? Why the US or UK have got to have a say about Hong Kong's national security? I really don't understand. What is it to you? Why Hong Kong having a national security law concerns you when it doesn't take away any freedom more than they already have? There's no loss of freedom in Hong Kong. Freedom always have a limit, just like any other country. Like you say, there's no country that will allow treason, separatism, terrorism in their own cities.
Right.
So why Hong Kong is so special, so different, that the whole world is uproar about having this national security law and imposed on Hong Kong?
I honestly have no idea. I've been trying to follow a little bit of the story. There's so much history there, and there's so much. And that history is not recent history, not just recent history. It goes back for years, right?
Yeah, about over 150 years.
Right.
Yes.
And so this is a very similar, approach to the discussion that we had with 150 years of say race tensions, right?
Yes.
Kind of parallel.
Yeah. But I think the most important thing is it's like when we go back to the news not being factual. They're mixing in a lot of things. The joint declaration, basic law, one country, two system. And now this national security law is destroying all that.
Yeah,
that is not factual. That is not factual.
But you'll see a difference. So and I'm assuming you see this difference. You watch Chinese news, right?
Yes,
and you also see the news spin on it in the West.
Oh yeah, so Chinese news, BBC, Sky News.
And is it parallel?
Oh,
or it's completely different.
Completely different. Yeah. So I urge some you have a look at the Hard Talk. I think it's a talk show on BBC. Hard Talk.
Yeah, I think so.
And I think they recently interviewed one of the barrister in Hong Kong, an MP in Hong Kong, and you will see the arrogance of the interviewer on his stance, already biased, very biased stance coming from the top, to make unfactual accusations after accusations. Have a look at it. It's very, very interesting.
Okay.
And because how can you argue? How can you have a constructive debate when all they need is to make empty accusation without anything to back up?
Right, correct. Yeah.
You can't have a decent
debate.
debate when all they're throwing in your face is accusations. lies, smears. So you can't when it seems like they make their own mind up and they are not willing to accept your point of view or even debate reality.
Yeah.
So the reality is anybody fleeing Hong Kong because the law is already enforced 1st of January.
Right.
1st of July, sorry. 1st of July is already enforced. Do you see masses of people fleeing Hong Kong because of this, what do you call them? The
inhumane practices and stuff like that. Yeah,
something
sure.
like that. Yeah.
But that also leads into the stuff that happened pre-COVID, that we had all the riots in Hong Kong and stuff like that as well, right?
Yes.
So it leads into the situation of Hong Kong being worried about extraditing again criminals and stuff like that, right?
Yes.
So there is a little bit of history too.
That was another thing that's blown out of proportion. Extradition law. UK have extradition law. I think that there are about 20 countries has got extradition law to China.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So is it ridiculous when Hong Kong hasn't got one with China and Taiwan?
Yeah.
So like I said from the last episode, it was one of the Hong Kong youth went to Taiwan with his girlfriend, killed his girlfriend, dumped his girlfriend in Taiwan in a suitcase, flew back to Hong Kong. And because Hong Kong and Taiwan and China haven't got extradition law, they couldn't extradite him back to Taiwan for trial. So now this murderer, knowing no murderer, is now free in Hong Kong walking around.
That's crazy.
Yes. And the whole Hong Kong people support it, but not Hong Kong, but a lot of people in Hong Kong support it. That is crazy. Support injustice just because based on a fear, arbitrary fear that is imaginary.
Right.
When there's a murderer walking around in Hong Kong, that is real. That is what is real, is there is a hole in the Hong Kong's law. So you tell me now, this example will draw all the criminals from Taiwan, China, after they commit a crime, where do they go?
Yeah, that's nuts.
Hong Kong. Because why? There's no extradition.
Why not? Yeah, sure.
No extradition law between Hong Kong, China, Hong Kong, Taiwan.
Wow.
Yes. And people come out to protest against a law to fill a hole in the existing law.
Yeah.
Just like this national security, Hong Kong under the basic law, they have got a responsibility to enact a national security law under the basic law.
Yeah.
Which after 23 years, they haven't done. They have not fulfilled their responsibility. So China have to find another way, according to the framework, still legally, to enforce a national law to enforce it onto the regional.
So then, what's the narrative with the flag protests, the Hong Kong flag and stuff like that? Where does that play into it?
Oh yes, we still don't know yet. I think yes, it might be breaking the law, but how much is a punishment? I don't know.
But did they choose to do that because of the gray area then, or
it's not a gray area when you're waving an independence flag?
Sure.
Yes.
It should be right of expression, and
that is. I think that's gone beyond of freedom of expression when you're waving death to the CCP or Hong Kong independence, glory to Hong Kong. Those kind of very.
No, I'm talking about the red flag with the yellow swirly symbol in the middle of it, right? Is that an organization's flag?
A red flag with a squirrely.
Some of the news stories I saw, that they had the same flag, and I'm not sure what that is. It was like a swirly yellow symbol in the middle of a red flag. It wasn't like a communist flag or nothing like that. It was like a different thing.
I don't know about that now.
I'll have to look that up myself. Yeah, I'll have to look that up.
Yes, but in the rioters, the separatists, they have got their own independence flag, independence songs. So the Chinese government has been very, very good to the people. They already say that there's no. So before this law, we don't care what you did, as long as you don't do it, we're not going to take you into account.
Yeah. I'm just checking the cameras to make sure they're still good. That was sorry.
Yeah. So who's fleeing? No one's fleeing. No one's fleeing. Yes. And I think what the Western media have failed to report are there were over 3 million people signed up in supportive of this national security law. And then they're not interested. They're not interested to that side of the story.
Well, who imposed the security law then? So there were 3 million people that signed a petition in favor.
In favor, yeah.
And there are how many people in Hong Kong? Again?
7.5.
7.5 million. So it's quite a majority.
So it's quite a majority. Yes.
When you consider it wasn't put to vote, but it's still still a good majority, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes. So it's interesting how everything is like in Hong Kong side. Like you say, from what I've seen after 6 months of rioting, after the COVID, countless businesses are suffering, people losing their money, losing their jobs. But we see the stock market rising. We see the house price rising. I just don't understand. We don't understand it.
It's nuts. And I've been watching some of the stock stuff, and all these companies that are afraid of being delisted now and stuff like that.
Yes.
And Trump's taken a very hard, or Trump's government, I say Trump's government, the U.S. government, are taking a very hard stance on trade with China, and it don't look very good at the moment. I'm telling you,
And on top of that, the coffee company.
I saw that. Yeah,
what's that name? I forgot.
Is it Life Coffee or something like that? Or
it was fudging the sales
fudging
figures.
the figures. Yeah.
Yes.
So that doesn't help. And there should be transparency. Like I find it very strange. Like
what do you think? Who has done it? Fudging the figures.
Well, it can be anybody. It can be anybody along the way. I mean,
because if I am the Chinese company that has successfully listed in the U.S., my job is done. I don't need to fudge nothing.
Well, you do if you want your stock price to go up and you own a majority stake in your company.
When I listed, I don't own the majority. Surely they don't own the majority.
Yeah, of course you will, because you got a majority in order to.
But I think that for the CFO, CEO, they have got more incentive to fudge the figures than the owner, than the majority owner.
Well, most of them will have massive bonuses.
Yeah, exactly.
But
they want to keep their jobs, their salary, and the bonuses.
Yeah.
So those people have more incentives than the owner, like the majority, the original owner of the coffee shop. Because for him, the risk he's taking for the short-term rise of the share prices is nowhere enough for the risk that he could get exposed. Like now, that his reputation is gone, his money is gone. Now he's finished.
Yeah, well, this is the interesting thing that I find about these large companies or large organizations owning parts of different countries, and how can you have like say I think I talked to you before about NIO. It's an electric car maker in China, right? And they've listed on the U.S. stock market. They don't sell their vehicles anywhere else in the world but China, but yet they've got billions in shares on the U.S. stock market. Nobody's even seen one of their vehicles in the West unless they've gone to China, and they're a multi-billion, pound company that's trading, and you have no way of knowing exactly what they're putting through the books or how they're doing it. Now, okay, you may say that those records can be traced locally, but how can a Chinese company?
Yeah,
how can large parts of Birmingham be owned by corporations in China, and they don't have any dealings with it here at all? It's just an investment for them. That to me, I mean, I say it sarcastically when I ask the question, because I understand that business is business, and if you could own a piece of something somewhere and do it and invest in it and make money, I can see how it happens, and it does help trade and it does help the overall situations. But how could like this coffee company? What's stopping them from fudging the figures and making? If it doesn't affect you, it doesn't affect our business in China. There's no bad press. There's no. I mean, obviously there will be bad press, but there's no immediate repercussions. Exactly. I'll tell those guys whatever we want, and we'll inflate our business, and our business will go from being 1.5 billion to suddenly 4 billion. And who's hurting anybody? If we get caught, we get caught. If not, I'm cashing out of my shares anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
Like I say, once they have once they listed, once they got the money, they have win already. There's no more need to, because there was promises, but in reality, if you don't meet the promises, oops, next year, give them more time.
But that's finance. That's raising more capital. That you got a shit business, but you can raise the capital.
Capital, yes.
Then all of a sudden you got a business that's valued at this, even though it's not. It's about raising money, and that's what the stock. That's all the stock market is a giant Kickstarter campaign, right? Mm-hmm. I'm going to list my company on the stock market, and eventually that is going to equate to funds to run my business. Now my business. I mean, it's unbelievable to me. Yeah. Like look at a company like Tesla. I love Tesla, right? But how can Tesla go from trading at $300 a share to like $1,600 a share in like 8 weeks during the middle of the world's biggest crisis? Yes. Like, okay, you can see how it can happen. Speculation. People are putting their money there instead of other places. He's got a great foundation, etc. But in reality, what are we even talking about here, man? Yeah, like it's all shekels and coins and fluctuating prices. Your net worth is what it is today. Tomorrow it could be completely different just because I've got assets or promissory notes and that whole thing. Just I really, really, really must take the time to sit down and get my financial education right. I've looked at several different videos on YouTube where you've got kids that are explaining it, and I'm going, I'm literally sitting there like an ape. I'm like, I don't understand,
But the problem is, I think not the problem is, but if education will make you a wizard in the stock market, then all those lecturers, all those financial teachers, and they should be millionaires.
Yeah, no.
So because the theories does not translate in the stock market.
Of course. I'm not talking about. I don't want to learn to read the tea leaves. I just want to understand how the fundamentals of everything works. Yeah. Like, do you understand 10-year bills or promissory notes and all these bonds? And it's like that's the kind of stuff that I think that really I need to sit there and I need to learn what happens. Mm-hmm. How can a company use those to its advantage? Mm-hmm. I mean, at our scale in business, we've never had to worry about anything like that.
Yeah, we don't need to. No.
But it would really be nice to know how it works.
I think you find out some very interesting and shocking discoveries if you really understand the monetary system.
Sure.
Yeah, so I've watched a few videos on the simplified forms, and yes, you'll be surprised.
We must make an effort to do that. Actually, I think that's it would be a cool thing to do. You and I sit around and we talk about all kinds of things, and we're trying to learn more.
Sure,
and it would be interesting to kind of take a course, or maybe I'll look at something to.
Aye.
But then again, this is just like me taking the Mandarin course that I'm supposed to have been doing, and I've had all this time to do in the last 4 months, and I haven't learned anything. Yeah. Nothing. No, I still only know my generic cuss words, and that's pretty much it.
That's a start.
It's a start. Yeah. But I mean, I think that it all ties in, man. It's interesting. I own a couple stocks, but I don't understand any of that kind of stuff, and I really should, because if I invest in the stock market, then I just become a bag holder, and I don't even know what I'm doing. I might as well be at the casino putting it on red and black.
Yeah. Well, I think one thing for sure, they go on cycle. So if they fall, eventually they go back up.
Sure.
They go back up, eventually go back down a little bit.
Yeah. If there's one thing I know, I'm not a trader.
Well, as long as the stock is in a company that's sound, it's like the banks, Barclays, and
sure.
Yeah, those
blue chips.
Yeah, blue chips company, and so it's a good form of saving. Let's say every single year you got a couple grand spare, put it in. This year put 3 grand in, next year put 4 grand in, next year put 3 grand in. Eventually, 10 years, you should make a profit.
As long as you beat inflation, that's all you're trying to do, really, at the end of the day, isn't it?
Yeah, inflation and then depreciation. Yes.
Yeah. So all things that we're going to be affected by here in the short term, I think, in the next 2 or 3 years. I mean, who knows how it's all going to play out? I think one of the interesting things with the COVID thing was do you know much about this restaurant? Is it 10 pounds a head or something? Is it unlimited? Can you do it as many times as you want?
Yes, it's a very poorly thought scheme, I think. And already for the first day it came out, there are people with very creative idea on how to beat the system. So they will have like a starter and the mains on one bill, dessert and the drinks on the second bill. So for the restaurant, it doesn't matter because they get the money back from the government anyway.
Right.
But that means that these customers claim twice. So
that's what I'm trying to say. How can they possibly start something? How do they police it?
they can't. How can they police?
How many?
It must be self-policed.
How many businesses will be out there right now, thinking that they're not going to be audited and just doing as many checks as they want to put through? I mean, surely it's gotta have some sort of a caveat in the rules that it has to include an entree and whatever.
Or, like you say, how can you even know that these customers exist?
Yeah, it's interesting. Actually, I'd love to see how they're justifying it.
So if the restaurant just make up some email address, some address, and this is seven people in my restaurant, and they ate 140 quid, and I want to claim 70 quid from the government. And every night, every single restaurant do a few of these things. How much is it going to cost the UK economy?
So if you're out there and you understand exactly what's happening, Mr. Chancellor of the Exchange or whatever, get in touch with Nate Tice at gmail.com. That's N8, the number 8, TICE at gmail.com, because I'd love to get somebody who understands exactly how that works.
Maybe it's even better idea for the customers to pay for the full bill and make a rebate.
I haven't looked at it. It came out, and I just thought, it seems like a good idea. I like the fact that they're trying to drive trade, but anything like that, it was like this whole supposable they were going to give 50 or was it 500 pounds to everybody to use in vouchers, shopping vouchers to stimulate the economy, and to me that shit just all seems insane. I can't tell you how many people I've heard that haven't paid their rent for 3 months or any bills for 3 months. I mean, there are a few guys I know here that took the business grants. They shut their businesses and they went and bought brand new cars as soon as they got the grant. I know of at least 3 people that didn't use that business grant for their business. They literally took it as a cash injection and went out and blew it instantly. Yeah,
well, then that's money back into the economy.
I suppose so. Yeah, I suppose so. So that's the whole point.
That's so point, but. You could argue they make it too easy for people to abuse, and now these people are the victims of the lack of control, restraint.
Right. Yeah.
And so there will be consequences, and we will see in the next couple of years to see how
you pay for it and where it came from.
Yeah, how many people default on their loans and go bankrupt, and how the government is going to
deal with that.
To get the money back. But the £500 per citizen is not unheard of. I think for those who feel sorry for Hong Kong, every Hong Kongers get £1,000 each.
Really?
Yeah, £1,000 each, and they pay 0% VAT.
Yeah,
there's no VAT. They get £1,000 each to spend how they like, and I think there's 1 or 2 more things that they have, but I don't have the details.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, and I suppose these are things that people have done well. I mean, again, I can't fault the English government very much at all for how they've dealt with this situation. Now, I know that there are people that will be without, maybe self-employed, maybe just starting businesses, or didn't have their money on the books or whatever else, and they may have taken big hits in the shutdown and maybe taken big hits forward. But I really think they did a good job.
Nathan, I think everybody spending money is not a difficult job. You can't go wrong with giving.
I'm good at it.
I don't think you can go much wrong of giving money away. Now the good job start in leading this country to a direction of recovering in this long road of recovery. If we can recover within 5 years, that is a good job.
Yeah, that'd be amazing, actually.
That is a good job. Yeah. So now the good job is to this. Like I said, it's half-hearted lockdown. Is it necessary?
Well, it's done now.
It's done.
We've done it, and now the question is will they do it again? So these are the things that I do think about. Like, okay, if we get a big second spike in October, are we going to shut down again? Or are we just going to do? I mean, can we afford to shut down again?
Well, we have seen some pubs already have to close just a few days of reopening because of there's a case, as customers got a case, and
I haven't been following any.
Yeah, then they have to close. So my question is, you expect that reopening before the virus is contained, but we can't really contain it with the half-hearted lockdown. It's not a lockdown. This is not a lockdown at all. It just stopped.
Well, this is what New Zealand did, right? New Zealand did 2 concurrent 2-week lockdowns, very strict lockdowns.
Very
right?
strict lockdown, yeah.
And that seemed to kind of wipe it out.
Yes, you contained it, you stopped it, stop that, stop
I
it.
just don't think it would ever happen now. I can't see any countries in the world that I've visited in my lifetime that would do that. I can't see it.
Well, I think the face mask is the first step because Hong Kong, although we haven't had a lockdown, real lockdown. There are restrictions on pubs and restaurants, table sizes, but life in general is not stopped. People go to work, the supermarket still opens, and public transport still going.
Yeah.
And so the normal lives, 80% is still going on, apart from the school, pubs, restaurants. And
Schools, man, schools is a whole different thing as well.
Yes.
Like I'll be honest, when it comes to the kids, I don't want my kids going back, man. Just yet. Jacob, Olivia went back for a taster day. They had a taster day where they brought the kids to talk about their feelings and about what was going on for like a couple of hours
Right.
at her high school. And as far as the boy, he's going to be 5.
yeah, dude. How can you
There's no
expect a
social
5 years
distancing.
old?
There's no mask. There's no nothing. And you can't expect that if we go to a grocery store we have to wear a mask, but yet kids that are going to high school aren't going to be required to wear a mask.
Yes.
I think that kind of logic is very flawed and it's very strange.
Like I say again, half-hearted
Yeah.
measure again and again. And so what do you expect business to do? Restaurant, for example. If I hear this case, just one of my customers get COVID, my whole operation have to close.
Sure.
All of us have to go for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Isolation.
Those kind of things make sense, I think.
Yeah, so that's why there's a lot of restaurants, they rather not open.
Yeah.
They are rather just do the delivery part of their business.
I know a few takeaways here that haven't opened yet. They close and they never operate. I mean, it's weird because we know between us groups that have been open the whole time, didn't shut at all in the takeaway industry, and then I know a few guys that they're saying maybe September, October they'll come back. They're actually just
especially when you still got the furlough scheme, self-employed grant.
Sure, yeah.
So there's no incentive for them to reopen anytime soon.
No, I think the one of the 2 guys that I know, he actually is doing it just because he doesn't feel that it's safe. But that's a whole nother discussion, I suppose. Yeah.
So there are different people with different thinking. But the reality is, if they don't get the furlough, if they don't get the self-employment grant,
You got to get to work.
there's a much more incentive for them to reopen.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, they got to get to work. They
They got to
can't
get to
afford
work.
to be off.
Yeah.
Sure, of course.
So now they're sitting at home with 80% pay, doing nothing, rather than open, doing 100% work for 20% extra.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now what about holidays? Holidays and flights. Where do you stand? Going to take any holidays? Take any flights?
No, not at the moment. Not at the moment. So if you look at country by countries, then if you go to America, wow, America is much more severe than UK. But if you're from UK, you go to Hong Kong, UK is much more severe than Hong Kong.
Yeah, sure, of course.
And the highest risk is in the plane when you're traveling for a prolonged period of time in a circulated air inside the plane, sharing toilets in a very close proximity with other passengers, that is a very high risk area. And if you need to take a transfer as well, you go to another airport, waiting lounge, canteen,
you're exposed
toilet.
to
You're
higher
exposed
numbers
to
of people.
a lot of people from everywhere in the world. And so yes, so if you can avoid it, avoid it. And if you go to Greece or Turkey or Egypt, if one guy in your hotel got it, you mean you're talking about one in like 2,000, 3,000 people?
Yeah, see, I'm
Get it.
torn. I'm real torn. We don't have anything immediately booked, but we had a few cruises that were booked that we've had to reschedule. Right
On the cruise, it's even worse, isn't it?
But I don't know. Here's where I guess I'm conflicted. And I don't know if I'm conflicted because of my love for the actual holiday, or if I'm conflicted by the new norm. Okay, so for instance, there are people who are flying now. Admittedly, they're not sitting elbow to elbow on most of the European flights.
Because they are half empty.
But some of the flights that I've seen in the States, people are asses and elbows, and they're right up against the people next to them. They're just wearing a mask. Would I fly right now? I don't know. I obviously trust you, and I've had a test, but we don't know. We're still behind the screen, and when we're not here at the studio, and we're not behind the mics, we're going to be back in the mask, and we're walking around the office and stuff like that, right? But would I go sit on a plane with total strangers and be right next to them? I don't know, man. I don't know if that's the new norm or if people will accept it. However, I know people right now that are on holiday in Italy and who have. I also know people who've gone to Spain, and the first flight that was out, they had the holiday book still. They were able to take it, and they took it. And they've gone, and they're in the middle of in Italy, and they're taking pictures at the Tivoli fountain and all that kind of stuff. And there's nobody around them at all. Obviously somebody took their photo, so clearly they handed their phone to a stranger. Nobody's wearing a mask, and they took their masks off for the photos. And the whole 9 yards, man. It's strange.
So it's a risk that I think because still. Is staycation in the UK is twice, it's double the amount of money that you spend going to abroad still.
Nah, I'm talking about just in relation to COVID.
COVID, yeah, I think it's a financial as well. So for half amount of money that you spend in the UK, you could have a guaranteed sunshine. Not a lot of people, nice beach. The
death rates are interesting to me. They're much less now. Obviously, there are more people that seem to be getting infected, and they're getting better at treating it.
Oh yeah. So the infection rate, death rate is declining.
Anticoagulants.
And then we got a little bit up there, and then suddenly, face mask.
No, of course, yeah, no, I get that. But what I'm talking about is from a medical point of view. They're doing things like thinning blood, and they know better ways of treating it, and they actually seem to be really getting a grasp on it.
Oh, right. Yeah.
But it's such an aggressive situation that it just looks like if you're unlucky enough to be in that 5% or 1% or whatever the figure is, that is really affected by it, man. It seems tough. Seems tough.
Yes, I think all illness are, and it's like the common flu. Every single year, they will take 10,000 people's lives, and
it's more than that. It's something like 30 or 60,000. I saw.
Is it in the UK?
But no, not in the UK. This was a US number.
US number, So if you got underlying health problem, you will get affected more than the usual.
Yeah, but again, that's something that I think a lot of people say that look, it's underlying health problem is going to be a problem, but this thing seems to take people who are thin, who are fine.
Yes, I think
it's crazy.
This is a problem because it's new.
Yeah,
it's new. There's no vaccines, and like you say, we don't know a lot about it. And is it worth the risking the whole populations for an unknown? I think it is a reasonable step to contain it. sacrifice, but how long of a sacrifice?
Oh, I mean, in my opinion, we're in it now, and I don't see it shutting down.
Yes.
I don't see it shutting down again. The only way I would possibly see it shutting down again is if the NHS is massively overwhelmed. So there's that many admissions that they just can't keep up on top of it, But then on the other end of the spectrum, there's still, I don't know how many hospital beds sitting around unused in all these Nightingale hospitals and stuff around the country, and they have the capacity to do that. So that's why I believe that they made a collective decision to let's open it back up, let's get the economy turned back on again, let's see how we cope, see how we go, and then if you get to the stage where you have to shut it down, then that's when they'll shut it down. So, but my big concern with that is school. I don't know why, but I think that's the thing that bugs me the most. But ironically, I'm worried about, say I'm worried about, the lad, he's 5 years old. Can he social distance? The fact of the matter is adults, when you go out to the grocery store, can't even freaking do it. So maybe there's no less risk there than there is with him doing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know.
So with a school, typical, like how many hundreds of students?
They're on top of each other.
Yeah.
I mean, they're overcrowded, man. The schools, they've got kids in temporary classrooms now because there's that many people in the in the local council and borough for the school in the catchment area.
Yeah, they won't have enough space.
They're bursting at the seams.
Yeah, they won't have enough space when. So how would they do it?
Yeah. Well, so I mean, I suppose a good thing that comes from it is
3-day school or 2-day school and alternative days.
That's right. Yeah.
So you get the half, but so that means that the education will be falling behind a year if they just do 2 days a week.
Now, from a business point of view, I don't think it's affected certain aspects of business. So, for instance, meetings and stuff. The days of driving, for me especially, the days of me driving 5 hours for a meeting that's an hour long and then coming back home, those are over, man. From now on, it's Zoom and so there are loads of benefits to some of the changes, but then there are other things like actual conducting the training and stuff that we do now in person to small groups. All those kind of things that are massively affected by what's happening and how we're going to move forward. So schools, I mean, some of the lessons I've seen in schools, they're pathetic. I'm watching some of the lessons, that my daughter's on, and I'm thinking they're not even live. They're just, the teachers are recording a 15-minute presentation,
Clips.
and then afterwards they're going, are there any questions? And the kids are on there, going anonymous and all this kind of stuff. They're all taking the mic, and it's kind of funny to see. But yeah, I hope there's a way around it, and I hope that it's going to get better and just keep rocking.
Yeah. Well, we have to.
Yeah, man. All right. Yeah. Well, look, that's it's almost the witching hour.
All right.
I think we'll call it there. I hope that.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah, anytime, and we're going to do it again. That's for sure. It's one of those things that I can't sit down and talk to you enough, man.
Oh, so anybody wants me to discuss anything, can just drop me a message, comment.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Yeah, we're there and we could do it. So, right. Okay. On that note, let's see if I can get the outro to work. I also forgot to hit record on the audio for about the first hour of this. No. So hopefully it's on the backup. Hopefully it's on the backup audio. Hey man, I'm just learning. It's a teething process.
Backup audio.
Yeah, I'll explain it all in just a second. Right. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you again. Thanks very much.
Bye bye.
Yeah, so I don't know if that actually works.
Never mind.